example for people around the world. Taiwan's President Tsai pays tribute to Queen Elizabeth II, Britain's longest-serving monarch. Back up, the Mid-Autumn Festival long weekend sees holiday-goers jam onto Taiwan's highways. Gender issues take center stage as the race for Taipei mayor heats up. And Taiwanese virtual reality films make a splash at the Venice Film Festival with 3 up for awards. A warm welcome to TaiwanPlus News. I'm Betty Chen. Britain's Queen Elizabeth II has died at the age of 96. She was the country's longest-serving monarch. Coming to power at the age of 25, tributes have been pouring in, including from Taiwan, as Louise Watt reports.
An outpouring of emotion for an instantly recognizable figure. Britain's Queen Elizabeth II died on Thursday at 96. After 70 years on the throne, she was the figurehead of the country as it rebuilt after the Second World War, lost its empire, and transformed its economy. Her reign saw 15 British prime ministers. The last of these, Liz Truss, appointed by the Queen only on Tuesday.
We are all devastated by the news that we have just heard from Balmoral. The death of Her Majesty the Queen is a huge shock to the nation and to the world. Queen Elizabeth II was the rock on which modern Britain was built. Our country has grown and flourished under her reign. Britain is the great country it is today because of her.
She headed the 56-nation Commonwealth, made up mostly of Britain's former colonies. And she remained head of state of more than a dozen countries, including 5 of Taiwan's 14 official diplomatic allies. Taiwan's President Tsai Ing-wen says she extended her deepest condolences to the royal family, the United Kingdom and the Commonwealth on the passing of Her Majesty Queen Elizabeth II. Taiwan remembers and celebrates her life of leadership and service, which set an example for people around the world. In Taiwan's capital, Taipei, people spoke of their shock at her passing.
英国的女王啊，基本上她就是一个看起来非常亲和，但是实际上内心应该是属于比较 tough 的一个人格的一个表现这样子。但是就是说她在位整体听起来，她并没有对于政治上有太多的一个干预，她等于是就是在她的一些公益跟她王室该尽的一些义务去做，所以觉得其实这是蛮佩服的。
当下听到就觉得很震惊，就是统治这一个世纪的伟大的一个女性，就是居然那么突然的就去离世。但其实她年纪做到那么大，当然可能突然离去也不稀奇啊，就是还是觉得很惋惜。
Queen Elizabeth's death means her eldest son is now King Charles III. He's not as popular as his mother was, and what the transition means for the future of Britain's monarchy is still unclear. Even for many Britons who said the country shouldn't have a monarchy in the 21st century, the Queen was a reassuring presence. The flag flew at half-mast outside Buckingham Palace, the Queen's official residence in London, as people gathered to lay flowers outside. Some sang the national anthem. Her death comes as Britain has lost some of its shine. It's grappling with economic woes, its highest inflation in 40 years because of rising food and energy prices. Add to that the ongoing fallout from its leaving the European Union and the war in Ukraine. Now the country has lost a queen who symbolized stability and continuity, adding to an uncertain future. Yunlin and Louise Watt for TaiwanPlus.
Leaders from around the world have spoken out in tribute to Queen Elizabeth II. During her 70-year reign, she met more than a dozen American presidents. President Joe Biden said the Queen defined an era. He and his wife, Jill Biden, went to the British Embassy in Washington to pay their respects. Narendra Modi, Prime Minister of the former British colony India, said Queen Elizabeth personified dignity and decency in public life. The Queen remained head of state of more than a dozen countries, including Canada. Its Prime Minister Justin Trudeau praised her service to Canadians and said he would miss his chats with the Queen.
She was one of my favorite people in the world.
Holiday goers are experiencing heavy traffic as they try to take advantage of the Mid-Autumn Festival long weekend. Traffic on the eastbound freeway heading out from Taipei is as slow as 30 kilometers per hour. The Highway Bureau predicts that traffic volume on Friday will be 1.7 times greater than usual. Despite a rising wave of COVID-19, crowds are swarming to tourist attractions around the country. The Hualien Ocean Park in the country's east saw more than 1,000 visitors this morning alone. Looking ahead, the government is anticipating high northbound traffic volume in the following days. It will impose high occupancy restrictions on National Freeway Number 5 between 2 p.m. and 9 p.m. over the weekend. Taiwan's military reported 45 Chinese military aircraft and 7 naval ships in areas around the country on Thursday. This included 25 intrusions into Taiwan's Air Defense Identification Zone, or ADIZ. This area is not the country's airspace, but it is used as a security buffer by the military. China has stepped up military posturing around Taiwan since the visit by U.S. House Speaker Nancy Pelosi to Taipei last month. Beijing claims Taiwan as part of its territory to be taken by force if necessary, despite the fact that Taiwan has never been a part of the People's Republic of China. Taiwan says that it continues to monitor Chinese military activity in the area, including by scrambling its own aircraft and deploying missile defense systems. For more on why China continues to set warplanes near Taiwan, our reporter Jaime Okan spoke to Ben Lewis, a defense analyst based in Washington, D.C.
Last night, we saw 25 Chinese military aircraft enter Taiwan's ADIZ. When China does this, what's the point and what is it hoping to gain?
One, I think in the most basic way, it's a way to train PLA pilots for what China views as an inevitable operation. And so that means that, you have different types of aircraft flying together, flying over different distances, collecting intelligence or kind of screening for Taiwanese aircraft. It's intended to say, China has the right to fly where it wants, when it wants. These boundaries are imaginary. We don't care what the Taiwanese people have to say about it. We're going to fly our planes where we want. And so it's a means to degrade Taiwanese sovereignty. And it's also an intimidation tactic to say to Taiwan, yeah, we could attack you whenever we want.
In the aftermath of Nancy Pelosi's visit to Taiwan, we saw a significant number of ADIZ incursions, specifically median line incursions. Can you explain what that line is and what its significance?
Well, I think it is very significant. The median line was established in the mid-1950s, I think around 1954 by the United States, kind of as an unofficial boundary in the Taiwan Strait. And it was intended to prevent conflict between the PRC and Taiwan. And I think that, it is quite significant that before August, we saw 23 median line violations publicly tracked by the MND since they started releasing that information publicly. And in August, we saw over 300 violations. We saw 302. And into September so far, we've seen a very high number of median line violations. I think it shows a very clear intent of the PRC that they're attempting to demonstrate, look, there's no lines we're not going to cross, right? And you can take that idea as far as you'd like. And so I think we're going to see more going forward. We already are, and I don't anticipate that changing. And I think it's quite significant, and I personally feel it's quite concerning.
With that increase in Chinese military activity, what do you think Taiwan's military will do to respond?
Well, I mean, what we saw in August was the policy of just being very steadfast, still setting up scrambling jets, monitoring aircraft. And I think that is the right call. I think that, in my opinion, in this type of situation, if you give an inch, the PRC is going to take a mile. if you signal that, you're weak on this issue, or that, it could be misconstrued in Chinese propaganda that, look, the Taiwanese aren't going to do anything because they know it's just true. We own Taiwan. I think that would be the angle that is spun. And I don't think that the PLA or the PRC was given the opportunity to spin that in August. I was very impressed with the professionalism of the Taiwanese armed forces. And I think it was demonstrated by the fact that, the PRC had to lie. They had to say that, we did enter Taiwan's territorial waters when they didn't. And so in regards to response, I think that the Taiwanese armed forces should continue to do what they're doing.
Taiwan has dropped 3 notches in a ranking of the best destinations for investment after Chinese military drills encircled the country last month. Taiwan fell from 3rd to 6th place on a U.S.-based Business Environment Risk Intelligence table. The country had risen from 4th place earlier this year and had been expected to hold on to that spot. But large-scale military exercises by China launched around Taiwan after the visit of U.S. House Speaker Nancy Pelosi have seen its political risk score plummet. Despite the drop, experts say Taiwan's economic outlook remains positive.
有兴趣的外资企业其实不会减少，只会越来越多，包含中国的风险、地缘政治的风险。如果还会持续这个样子的话，我想我们的大概的排名大概也就比较难有一个改善的空间了。
Taiwan's cabinet has confirmed that the minimum monthly wage will increase 4.5% to roughly $855 next year. The minimum wage hike was announced last week, but has now been officially put forth by Premier Su Zhenchang. Taiwan's minimum hourly wage will also rise by 4.5% to just under $6.
比起2016年，基本工资的月薪已经调幅达到32%，从20008块调到现在26400块。时薪调幅更高达47%。蔡总统上任以来，连续第7度的调涨基本工资。
Taipei mayoral candidate Chen from the ruling Democratic Progressive Party outlined his plans to tackle gender issues should he be elected. But not everyone is convinced by his ideas. Rick Cloward reports.
Ex-Health Minister Chen shot to fame in Taiwan, leading the country's COVID-19 response. But in his campaign to become mayor of the capital Taipei, he's not just running on his success dealing with the pandemic. Instead, he says the experience of looking after his child as a single father while his wife was abroad taught him the challenges women face juggling work and childcare, prompting him to mark gender equality as a cornerstone of his campaign. The leading candidate in a 3-way race, Chen is running for the ruling Democratic Progressive Party and says the Taipei city government should provide at-home childcare for parents and other subsidies to get more women into work. He also wants to protect citizens of any gender from domestic violence.
那男女一样，他的这样的一个受到霸凌或所需要受到保护的情况是一样，所以我们在上面会花精神来做这件事情。
Gender issues have become a hot topic in Taiwan. In 2021, the pay gap between men and women rose to 15.8%. There's also been a push to tackle harassment faced by women after a lawmaker revealed she had been abused by her partner. A recent government report laid bare the extent of gender-based violence in the country. But independent mayoral candidate Vivian Huang questioned the feasibility of Chen's plans.
男性的部分大部分是儿少，所以儿少的机构安置也都有紧急安置，不是性别的问题，而是你安置的对象他的需要的问题。
Zhang Wan'an, the candidate for the main opposition party Kuomintang, has also been out campaigning, but has yet to make public his gender policies. His spokesperson told TaiwanPlus he would do so in the near future. The mayorship of Taipei is often seen as a stepping stone to the presidency, and as the race heats up, all of the competitors know tackling gender-related issues will be one of the keys to success. Kama Xu and Rick Glowert for TaiwanPlus.
Taiwan's 2 biggest political parties have both expelled members for standing against the party's candidates in upcoming mayoral elections. The ruling Democratic Progressive Party has expelled former lawmaker Zheng Baoqing for running in Taoyuan City as an independent. The main opposition Kuomintang or KMT has kicked out Central Committee member Xu Zhengwen and former Hualien City Mayor Wei Jiaxian for independently running for council posts. And the KMT has likewise expelled Miaoli County Council Speaker Zhong Dongjin for running against the party's pick for magistrate there. The DPP's Chen has denounced his expulsion from the party.
去加官庙公啦，去加官庙公，把一个坚持党的理想、坚持一个建党精神的人就是被骂北国的人被一个北揍的人开除了。
A new political group is seeking to become Taiwan's 80th registered political party. As John Van Trieste reports, its platform is all about fun and one game in particular.
As Taiwan enters election season, a new political party is joining the scene. Unlike most of Taiwan's 79 existing parties, this party has just one purpose: the promotion of a tabletop game called Mahjong. It's a lively game played with clattering tiles, and it's a fixture of family gatherings and late-night hangouts with friends in much of East Asia. But the party says there is a stigma around Mahjong, in association with gambling. It also says the game is targeted under Taiwan's anti-gambling laws. The party wants to clear Mahjong's name and make it accessible to all.
台湾麻将人口将近有400-500万人，如果我们只要有其中的1/20，我们就有可能成为国内最大的政党。我们会推派人选作为不分区域委。我的目标是每一个乡镇都有麻将。
On its first day, the party was already recruiting members, with ads in Taiwan's 3 biggest newspapers, complete with QR codes allowing readers to register. The government is reviewing the new party's application. It also says the party's claim that Mahjong is illegal isn't true, as long as players aren't playing for money.
赌博罪，它是一个涉性的行为，就是所谓的基于偶然的事实来赌博财物，基于盈利的目的提供场所供人赌博的话，也会有赌博罪。
Still, some lovers of Mahjong say the chance to fix the game's image has piqued their interest in joining the party.
不要再那么刻板的，就是说，打麻将就是赌博。 我们就是想说，打麻将也可以，就是一个麻将比赛，大家竞技，也促进一些老人家的一个休闲活动。
Whether Mahjong is a form of gambling or not, party leaders are betting that the game is popular enough to launch a new political movement. Alex Chen and John Van Trieste for TaiwanPlus.
Coming up here on TaiwanPlus, we visit a county in western Taiwan for a torch-lit procession celebrating over a century of traditional culture.
In a changing world, when voices are being silenced, TaiwanPlus is listening. We tell those stories. No compromise, no boundaries,
people in Taiwan.
no fear.
I want to study Chinese. I'm Ryan Kilpatrick. Capital Taipei. TaiwanPlus.
TaiwanPlus News.
Welcome back. You're watching TaiwanPlus News. Taiwan recorded 34,000 new COVID-19 cases on Friday as a wave driven by the BA.5 subvariant continues to swell. The Pandemic Response Task Force has come under criticism from opposition parties for not buying vaccines to counter the new strain. Officials say BA.5 jabs are currently only available in the United States, and they're still in the animal testing phase. It says the new vaccines it is procuring will help protect Taiwan while the latest shots are developed.
现在有一个 BA.1 的一个次世代疫苗，而且它已经证实说它引起的抗体反应是比原始病毒株所做成的疫苗还要来得好。
Taiwan's Center for Traditional Medicine has launched an updated version of its homegrown herbal treatment for COVID-19. The National Research Institute of Chinese Medicine says clinical trials show its new treatment is effective against the BA.4 and BA.5 variants. According to the report, the mortality rate was 74% lower for COVID patients who were treated with a combination of the Institute's herbal remedy and conventional Western medicine compared to Western medicine alone. It is also effective in preventing lung damage. The research institute has already licensed the formula to 8 domestic pharmaceutical companies, one of which is preparing to apply for emergency use authorization. Japan's ruling Liberal Democratic Party has found that nearly half of its lawmakers had some form of contact with the controversial Unification Church. The party's connections to the church have been called into question since the assassination of former Prime Minister Shinzo Abe in July. The assassin says he targeted Abe because he believed Abe had ties with the church. Of the 179 lawmakers who said they had dealings with the church, 2 had direct help from the church during campaigns, and 17 had volunteer support from church members. The party says it will cut all ties with the church and other groups it says are socially problematic. Taiwanese virtual reality films are making a splash at this year's Venice Film Festival, which wraps up this weekend. 3 of the offerings are up for awards. A total of 67 Taiwanese VR works and industry players were featured on the sidelines of the festival. Taiwan was invited to set up a special booth organized by the government-sponsored Taiwan Creative Content Agency, which helps creators reach an international audience. The 3 Taiwanese films in competition are fantasy animation Red Tail, a human rights piece The Man Who Couldn't Leave, and experimental theater piece All That Remains. With the Venice Film Festival gearing up to announce the winners in its VR film competition, Andrew Ryan reached out to the director of All That Remains, Riverbed Theater's artistic director, Quake Quintero.
So first of all, can you start by telling us about your piece, All That Remains?
As a medium, it's really exciting because the audience in their own home or here, you look behind me, in the space here, they can put on an Oculus headset and suddenly they're transported into this other world. And it's kind of a unique work that there's not really a set sort of plot or storyline or characters. It's more like a living painting or like a living sculpture. And so for this 12 minutes, these images sort of wash over the audience. And yesterday we were screening it for some folks. And then after this 12 minutes, they took off the Oculus and they were in tears. And it was interesting because, Romeo doesn't die or Juliet doesn't die, but something happens. And so it's less about the plot or about these people in the work and more about creating this reflective experience in which the audience can see themselves.
Now, you've traditionally done stage plays. What are you hoping the audience will experience from virtual reality?
In 2011, we started doing these performances for an audience of one. So there are these live performances that were staged, really sort of intimate encounters for an audience. And exploring this model for about 10 years, and it got really expensive to have sometimes 8 or 10 performers performing for one person. And as we're making this transition to VR, we lose some of those sensory qualities, so we don't have touch or taste or smell, but we really gain this direct connection between the performer and the audience, where the performers really seem to almost be seen into the hearts of the audience. And so there's a moment where the woman enters the space and her eyes are down, and she looks up into the camera, and it's really as if we're being seen. And so really different than like a movie camera or like a film where you're watching up on a big screen. There's something really intimate about this VR world. It's not reality, but it's something that is sort of between reality and film. It's a new metaverse. The first time I screened it for my sister-in-law, as she's watching it, she kept backing up, and by the end she backed up about 6 feet because the characters kept getting closer and closer to her, and it was almost too much of an experience for her. At this time where a lot of us are separated by distance because of the pandemic, we're unable to go to theaters and to be in this communal space. It's a really special journey, and it's a big step for our theater company.
Now, I understand that there's actually a large contingent of artists from Taiwan who are in Venice this year. What's it like to be there with everybody representing Taiwan?
Yeah, it's been an amazing experience. It's a showcase where, again, you say you're a Taiwanese company and everyone's like, okay, there's high expectations. And it's remarkable that within like 6 or 7 years, Taiwan has become a leader in this field. And I imagine in the years to come, Taiwan will still be sort of taking that leading role.
Yunlin County in western Taiwan is celebrating the unique culture of its local Hakka people, a group that's lived in the area for more than a century. Jaime Okan has more.
Taiwan's Hakka people burn with pride for their heritage. Like most Taiwanese today, the Hakka are ethnic Chinese, but their language, culture, and history set them apart from the rest. In the western county of Yunlin, Hakka people hold a torchlit procession once a year to remember how their ancestors once protected their villages from bandits with night patrols. More than 1,000 take part.
亚会亚金，所以其实已经传承了100多年。这个历史的过程当中，也中断了30几年，在2006年再重新又找回大家共同记忆。
It's just one part of the region's unique Hakka culture, known as Sao'an Hakka culture, being celebrated at an annual festival. There are more than 20 events. They include traditional puppetry classes for children and the showcase of a fortune-telling technique that uses rice baskets to predict the harvest.
来深入的了解我们招安客云岭招安客的这个客家文化的一个这个文化的一个深厚的底蕴。那这次呢，我们同时就是在推动文化的同时，也希望带动观光。
It's all a demonstration of how even as Taiwan has changed, old, deep-rooted customs live on. As Naya Zhou, John Van Trieste, and Jaime Ocon for TaiwanPlus.
Thanks for watching TaiwanPlus News. I'm Betty Chen. Finally, we'll leave you with images of tributes to Queen Elizabeth II from countries around the world. For more stories from Taiwan and around the world, please download the TaiwanPlus app. Stay safe and see you next time.